quite hard to break it down into exactly which part of the business we do.
Yeah, it's quite fluid, isn't it?
Generally, I'm more interested in making the glass and you're more interested in the design side of things. But in practice, there's more of a sort of feedback relationship between the two of us. We both work together when we're actually making stuff anyway. And I like to think that I have some input on the design.
Definitely.
In discussing it all the time, aren't we, really?
I think I consider myself more as a designer. I've never really had that sort of want to learn a craft. That I think Dominic's got this passion to make the perfect object, and I think I'm more experimental and playful with my use of glass and other materials as well. But I'm quite inspired by watching Dominic making glass because he's very fluid of material, and it's really quite inspirational to watch.
I'm from the Isle of Wight originally, and I started in glass as an apprentice at Isle of Wight Glass, and after 2.5 years I went to University of Wolverhampton to do a BA in glass design, where I met Elaine.
I'm from Staffordshire originally, and on completing a BTEC at the local college I went to Wolverhampton University to study 3D design glass. From there I worked for the local industry for a while in design, and then went to the Royal College of Art.
After graduating, I went to Brierley Hill, the International Glass Centre, and worked there for 2 years. And during that time, we decided to look for a place where we could set up a studio and hopefully live as well. We managed to find a former Methodist chapel in Sallerhead, which is in the Staffordshire Moorlands.
We converted it into a live workspace, a studio flat and a workshop next door. The idea is that the flex should look as if it supports the light shade and the bulb. That was the concept. And the idea to use glass really came from chandelier repairs. Early electric chandeliers had hollow tubes like this to house the flex, and we thought it was interesting to make a really eccentric version.
So it was kind of led by the making process of actually drawing out a hollow tube of hot glass. And we thought we'd try and push the limits of what we could do with it.
Traditional chandeliers are usually made out of S's that are bent on a board around nails, so it was the idea that this should be really eccentric and free-formed.
We take a gather of glass and blow it into a heavy but hollow tube, and then we start drawing it out and take one end each and pull it out quite long while it's still hot, but not so hot that it's going to collapse and just go on the floor. You get the gloves on, the Kevlar gloves, so that they're heat proof, and then physically start looping it on a fireproof board and loop it into a shape that looks like it will be self-supporting and at the same time interesting.
We generally aim for 3 points as a base.
Yeah, like a milking stool, so you know it's going to stand up. Obviously doing it on a board, you can tell as well, and then kind of try and bring the top up. We do sort of two styles, don't we? One that's more vertical like this one, and then one that's more horizontal. And then we have to detach it from the iron and then put it into the annealing oven to cool down slowly overnight.
The ends are then finished and ground, and these brass caps applied, and it's wired up and assembled. The shade is then a blown glass which is cut locally, cut and polished. So we called it Unruly Limb because we liked this idea that it sort of crawled off a chandelier or broken off a chandelier. I'm quite good really in the way that I can prototype things. But making things repeatedly the same or absolutely beautifully is more your department. I think I'm quite playful with the material and I can get an essence of what I want, but then Don puts this level of finish on things that really makes them shine out.
That's what makes our work so strong, really, isn't it? Because it's not just about being well made, and it's not just an unusual, playful idea. It's the combination of the two, isn't it? It's that constant feedback, back and forth with ideas and how things should look and where they can go next, that really gives it the edge, really.
When I first started potting, and the fact that I'd been self-taught, I felt very unsure that was going to give me enough basis, really, to set out with a career. But I've come to realise that it isn't, going to college isn't the be-all and end-all, but I think what you miss out if you're self-taught, as I was, is the sort of network of colleagues that you make who are trained at the same time as you, and if you're lucky, the tutors also who teach you. But potters are a very helpful breed, and I have had lots of help and support from potters over the years. I had an opportunity last year to have an exhibition and a study trip to Japan, which I did in the spring, and while I was on the study part of the trip, I obviously was looking at work, and one of the things that absolutely fascinated me in Japan was the landscape and the trees particularly, and the wonderful shapes in the woods. And I found myself walking along and just picking up bits and pieces in the way of roots and pieces of wood to use, I hoped, for handles. I was thinking of trying to incorporate them into the teapots. I discovered using heavier pieces of wood when I came home went rather well for lids of jars. So I started working in stoneware, but I'd always liked the fineness of porcelain that I'd seen in museums, and I can't remember who gave me some porcelain, but eventually I got to use that, and I just immediately took to it as a fine clay, and I liked the fact that I could throw it thinly. I wasn't really trying to let it speak in a way at that time, because I was very much a person who wanted to control the shapes. And it's only actually since probably I've been here, maybe even since I've been to Japan, that I've come to be able to sort of let go a little bit of the control that I try and put on porcelain, and let the porcelain talk more as a material. This is a piece that I made after I had been to Japan last year. It's using a copper red glaze, a sang de boeuf, which gives this wonderful variation of colour from deep red to very pale, reduced pinky colour on the lid. And I've just used a piece of wood which I found while I was walking in Japan, and attached it with simple silver fittings which go through the ceramic and are held on the underside of the lid. The environment that I've always worked in has pretty well always been in the countryside. I started in Kent, and it's been very important to us to have a fairly sustainable lifestyle. We had a short period in Worcester we were not growing vegetables, but for the rest of our lives we've produced all our own vegetables. We like to rear as much meat that we can, that we eat, and it's an important part of our lives. I find the balance between working in the studio and gardening a good one. And it's wonderful to be able to go out from the workshop at the end of the day into the garden and pick one's own vegetables and enjoy sitting out for a meal in the evenings in such a lovely environment.
I studied at the University of Wolverhampton. I was there for 3 years doing wood, metal and plastics, three-dimensional design. I discovered metal there and started to explore more in metal, especially copper and gilded metal. Gilded metal is a mixture of copper and brass. At the time of graduation, we did a show called The New Designers, where I met a lady called Penelope McCower, and I applied to her Bishop's Land workshops. I was a resident for a year, and from there I decided to apply to the Royal College of Art. At the Royal College of Art, I was there for 2 years, working in silver, concentrating on more the functional side of metalworking, doing more silverware. After leaving the Royal College of Art, I decided to get my own workshop. All the forms that I make would start off as silver sheet, a flat piece of silver sheet. In order to get them into the forms that I require, say for example, a small beaker, I would take a disc, place it over the top of the wood and hammer down into the wood to get a slight cup form. As you can see here, the cup form would be blocked out into this shape, and in order to get it deeper, I would place it over a stake and hammer down from the outside. To make unusual forms, I sometimes use different templates, not just an obvious circle or an obvious square. I would sometimes cut an off shape out of a piece of silver sheet. So a piece of sheet like that would actually start off and turn out to be an object like that. I use the hammer marks to help me get this flowing feel around the actual pieces. Also, with silver, it reflects on all the light and all the different colours from around it. So it's quite interesting the way the hammer marks just distort that, and you can get quite a nice speckled effect, or sometimes it can look like skin, or sometimes it can look quite harsh. And I take advantage of that as much as possible. The new pieces that I'm making at the moment, the hammer marks are really a lot more finer than usual. So I'm trying to get an understanding of how I can take advantage of this surface quality that I create in the metal. With this piece, this is like the prototype or the first piece for the flamingo vase. As you can see here, you've got the bowl shape, and then cut from the bowl is 2 arms. And the idea is that the flowers would hold in the centre and come out the top. It's already cut out, and then I will bring the bowl up and then bring the arms up roughly, very slowly at the same time. This piece is particularly about control. You have to control the metal, otherwise it will split, or it will distort in a way where you can't get it back. When I first started working out of college, I was working part-time and working in the workshop half the time as well, or in the evenings and weekends. Over an 8-year period, I managed to develop my client base and the shows and the commissioning side of things, so that now that I'm working full-time in the workshop. It is a risk, but it's one of those risks where you feel that if you don't do it now, you'll never do it.